These Shropshire hills start around the Wrekin.
The way I see it, Shropshire is both obviously beautiful but also profoundly romantic. A romance is a story, and Shropshire's is truly wild and dramatic. It begins nearly 1 billion years ago when Shropshire sat on the margins of a huge frozen continent above the South Pole. There was fire as well as ice, as volcanoes erupted, thrown up as a decaying ocean floor slid beneath the landmass. Over the next 750 million years, a triangle of land between what is now the Peak District, the Welsh borders and London,
called the West Midlands Craton,
journeyed north, under seas, through deserts and tropical forests, to around where Shropshire sits now. This journey makes Shropshire arguably the most diverse geological region on the entire planet. The valley below is the northwestern edge of the West Midlands Craton. More specifically, it is the valley of the Church Stretton Fault, as seen from above Caer Caradoc. A fault is a deep crack in the Earth's crust. There are a number of faults along the Welsh border that were created during the Devonian orogeny, or mountain building event, that is most evident today in what is now North America. Back then, about 560 million years ago, all land was part of a southern supercontinent. A few miles further west of the Church Stretton Fault is the parallel Pontisford-Lindley Fault. The fault is still sprightly enough to cause the 1990 Bishop's Castle earthquake, which measured 5.1 on the Richter scale. Here are some of the rocks from the beginning of Shropshire's journey and some of the oldest in England. Most very old rocks are metamorphic. They have been buried and heated at great depth, which has changed their chemistry. The Primrose Hill gneiss is between 600 and 700 million years old, but is made from even older volcanic rocks. The similarly ancient Rushden schists were originally laid down as sediments. Both gneiss and schists have cycled deep within the Earth's surface and been baked by heat and pressure into their present form. These ancient rocks are found around here, below the Wrekin at Rushden, and at Primrose or Little Hill to the right. The heat and stresses produced by an ocean floor disappearing under a continent, and also the shearing movement of these two structures, produced the metamorphic rocks, the deep fault cracks in the Earth's crust, and the volcanoes. However, the new landscape created was quickly eroded as life hadn't evolved on land, and so nothing bound it together. Around 570 million years ago, the eroded sediments were washed towards the coast, forming the sandstone of the Long Mynd. We are looking down the Carding Valley back towards Caer Caradoc,
one of the Uriconian volcanics that were erupting lava over the beaches that were forming the Mynd.
The continued subduction of the ocean crust, twisting of the supercontinent, faulting and subsidence caused by stretching of the continental crust made for an explosive mix. Uricanium is the Latin name of this hill fault on top of the Wrekin. The Wrekin itself is not a volcano. No single volcanic vent has been found in Shropshire.
It may be that the lava gushed out onto the surface from fissures in the Earth's crust rather than single vents.
The first 4 billion years of the Earth's history is called the Precambrian period and includes all the geology we have looked at so far. Logically enough, the Precambrian was followed by the Cambrian period, when multicellular life exploded across the world. Urkel quarries near the Wrekin show the Pre and Cambrian boundary very well. The salmon pink rock to the left is Precambrian granophyre, while the bedded grey rock sloping down to the right is Cambrian quartzite. The 560 million year old granophyre is a volcanic rock that intruded into the surrounding subterranean strata, while the quartzite is a sedimentary sandstone laid down on beaches 540 million years ago. The ancient ocean, Iapetus, on the southern shores of which Shropshire lay, spread during the Cambrian period and volcanism stopped while life exploded. This is the age of the trilobite, aquatic creatures that look like large wood lice. The first English trilobite fossils were discovered here in the limestone at Cumley Quarry at the end of the 19th century. The soft sedimentary rocks laid down in the Cambrian have largely been eroded away, with the Urkel and Wrekin quartzite as its most obvious legacy.
Supposedly these are ripples on a fossilised sandy beach.
Quartzite reappears in the stiper stones, but this is an Ordovician rock, still the product of a sandy beach, but in a much more violent period. In the Ordovician, between 495 and 443 million years ago, Shropshire moved from the polar 65 degrees south to the doorstep of the tropics at 25 degrees south. Avalonia, a chip of the old supercontinent comprised of southern Britain and Ireland, was pushed north by the opening of a new ocean, the Reich to its south, and the closing of the Iapetus Ocean to its north. The Iapetus shoreline followed the Pontusford-Lindley Fault, and sediments forming the Hope Showers were deposited. The Iapetus subduction threw up the Hissington and Stapley volcanics, seen here below Condon Hill and forming Stapley Hill itself. Stapley Hill is built from the Stapley volcanic tuff, which is basically ash, later lava that intruded under the surface, and the Hope Shower. All three can be seen in this small quarry.
The volcanic intrusion, then the tuff, then the shale.
Towards the end of the Ordovician, Avalonia collided with another continent called Baltica, which caused Shropshire to shear up out of the sea, and yet more volcanism. Condon Hill and here, the Bredon Hills, mostly in Powys, are masses of lava that intruded into the landscape at that time. The Ordovician ended with an ice age. All this geological activity, called the climate, erupted basalt rock, sequestered the greenhouse gas CO2, forming calcium carbonate deposits. The remains of the supercontinent Gondwanaland shifted and rose over the South Pole, increasing glaciation, and there may even have been a dusting of meteorites blocking out the sunshine. This ice age gave rise to a mass extinction, but the episode ended fairly quickly, with the advent of the Silurian period, 443 million to 413 million years ago. The end of the Ice Age may be due to the ice sheets becoming too massive to be stable and shutting down the carbon sequestration, with CO2 subducted with the sea floor being released back into the atmosphere by volcanism. These changes may have been amplified by precession of the Earth's orbit around the Sun. The Silurian is very well represented here around Ludlow and at Wenlock Edge just to the northeast. Sea level rose up and Shropshire warmed up, enough for coral reefs to form. This gave Shropshire the Wenlock Edge complex and its associated limestone escarpments.
The fossilised coral has been extensively quarried.
Extinction events supercharge evolution by opening up opportunities. The Silurian saw the animals conquer the land. Centipede-like creatures had dipped their toes into the sand in the Cambrian, but the spiders, or rather mites, were the first animals to leave the sea completely behind. Shropshire was still mostly submerged, which created the Ludlow fossil fish beds on the southern bank of the River Teme. Later, the Iapetus Ocean finally closed completely as Avalonia and Baltica hit the northwestern continent of Laurentia. Southern and northern Britain and Ireland were sutured together. The collision pushed up the Highlands of Scotland and also raised Shropshire entirely out of the sea. The Devonian period, 418 to 362 million years ago, found the triangle of land around Shropshire united with the rest of the British Isles on the southern margins of what is known as the Old Red Sandstone continent. The Caledonian Mountains in Scotland were then as tall as the Himalayas are now, and the Devonian also gave Shropshire its two highest peaks, the Clee Hills, seen here from Ludlow. The Clee Hills are based on Old Red Sandstone, which has also been used as a building material in Ludlow. For example, it provided the housing for the Broadgate portcullis. Shropshire was dry for the whole of the Devonian, apart from its rivers, which eroded the continent on which it stood at the margin. By the Carboniferous period, 362 to 290 million years ago, the Old Red Sandstone continent was eroding away to allow shallow tropical seas to transgress over Shropshire. Limestone was deposited in the fertile warm water. This outcrop at Llanymynech is right on the Welsh border.
Not all of Shropshire was submerged. There were a number of river deltas with luxuriant equatorial vegetation that decayed to form the coal measures, which also contain ironstone that formed in the swampland. Iron, coal and limestone are what you need to smelt iron, and they are all found here in Coalbrookdale. This is where the Industrial Revolution began, and this is the world's first iron bridge. At the end of the Carboniferous, the Rheic Ocean closed, and the continental collision caused a mountain building episode called the Variscan orogeny. This injected lava into the Clee Hills, which now forms their caps, as a very resistant stone called dolerite. The Permio-Triassic, or New Red Sandstone period, 290 to 206 million years ago, found Shropshire at the latitude of the Sahara Desert, in the middle of the new Pangaea supercontinent, hence the fossil sand dunes you can see at Bridgnorth. The Permian saw a mass extinction 248 million years ago that may have been caused by a drop in sea levels due to the lack of undersea volcanism when the Pangaea supercontinent was created. The extinction once again opened up evolutionary opportunities, and by the early Triassic, reptiles roamed the continent. Many buildings in Shropshire are made of the Triassic sandstone from here at Grinzill, and the quarries are still worked. The Triassic is almost the end of the epoch so far as Shropshire's rocks are concerned. For the most recent 200 million years or so, the south and east of England take the strain. There are later Jurassic rocks around Preece, but they are very poorly exposed. However, the current chapter of the Earth's history has a line in Shropshire's story. When the Atlantic began to open 50 million years ago, a swarm of volcanic intrusions spread across Britain, and the one you are looking at now shot through Shropshire. It's also at Grinzill where this presentation began.